Elizabeth paced nervously in her spacious, meticulously organized office, the clack of her heels echoing off the marble floors. As she adjusted the plaques lining her wall, each a testament to her decades of dedication to Millstone Corp., her mind raced with the rumors of the new CEO. Her assistant knocked timidly, a slight figure at the door. "Liz, they're ready for you in the conference room. The board is about to introduce him." Her stomach knotted as she walked to the conference room, her mind replaying that fateful day years ago when she had mocked a fellow seminar attendee, not knowing he was a guest speaker, not just any guest speaker, but one that would become pivotal in her life. As she entered the conference room, a hush fell over her colleagues, their eyes darting between her and the front of the room where the new CEO stood. Tall, confident, with a commanding presence that seemed familiar. As the chairman introduced him, her heart stopped. "Please welcome our new CEO, Michael Turner." The room erupted in applause, but Elizabeth stood frozen, her face pale as memories flooded back. Michael, the man she had once ridiculed, was now her boss. The irony of her situation was as sharp as a knife, and as she clapped along with her colleagues, a cold sweat broke out across her forehead. This was her reckoning. As the clapping subsided, Michael stepped forward with a smile that seemed to light up the room. He began outlining his vision for Millstone Corp., speaking of innovation, inclusivity, and a new direction that would set the company apart in the competitive market. His voice was resonant, his demeanor unflappable. Elizabeth found herself inadvertently drawn to his words, despite the turmoil churning inside her. After the meeting, her colleagues buzzed with excitement, clustering around Michael to introduce themselves. Elizabeth hung back, her mind racing. She needed to regain her composure, to maintain her role at the company she had given so much to. Yet the fear of Michael recognizing her, of calling her out for her past misdeeds, was paralyzing. Over the next few weeks, Elizabeth watched as Michael began making changes. He introduced new team dynamics, scheduled workshops on diversity and inclusion, and even rearranged the physical layout of the office to promote more open communication. His approach was different, modern, and it was working. Elizabeth felt her resistance waning as she saw the positive impact of his leadership. But the weight of her secret, that humiliating encounter, lingered like a shadow. She knew a confrontation was inevitable. The confrontation came sooner than she expected. Michael called her into his office late one afternoon. The office was sleek, with panoramic views of the city. He stood by the window, looking out as she entered. "Elizabeth, please have a seat," he said, gesturing to a chair. His tone was even, professional, but Elizabeth's heart pounded in her ears. "I wanted to discuss your role in the new structure I'm implementing," Michael began. "I see a lot of potential for your expertise to play a key part in our growth." Elizabeth nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you, Michael. I appreciate your confidence." He paused, turning to face her directly. "I also want to address something personal. I believe we've met before, under less than ideal circumstances." Elizabeth's breath caught. This was it. She braced herself, looking down at her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Yes, I remember. I am deeply sorry for that day. It was inexcusable." Michael nodded slowly. "I'm glad you remember. I do too. But I believe in growth and redemption, Elizabeth. I'm not here to dwell on the past unless it's to learn from it." His words were a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea of her guilt. Elizabeth looked up, her eyes meeting his. "Thank you, Michael. I've thought a lot about that day and how I acted. I'm not that person anymore." "I believe you," he said simply, "and I'm hoping you'll join me in making this company a place where everyone feels valued, regardless of their background." Emboldened by Michael's forgiveness and trust, Elizabeth threw herself into her work with a new zeal. She attended every workshop, read books on leadership and diversity, and even started mentoring young employees from diverse backgrounds. Her transformation was noticed. Colleagues began approaching her for advice, and she was often cited as an exemplary leader in company newsletters. Elizabeth found a profound satisfaction in her work that went beyond professional success. She was making amends, building something worthwhile. As months turned into years, the company flourished under Michael's leadership, with Elizabeth as one of his most trusted advisors. The workplace culture had shifted dramatically, and profits were at an all-time high. As Elizabeth approached retirement, she reflected on her journey at Millstone Corporation. At her farewell party, she was given the floor to speak. The room was filled with faces, new and old, all looking at her with respect. "I stand before you today not only to say goodbye but to express my gratitude," Elizabeth began, her voice steady. "Gratitude for the lessons I've learned, for the forgiveness I was granted, and for the opportunity to better myself. Michael showed me that it's never too late to change and that the true measure of our character is how we rise after falling." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the crowd. "Let's continue to build a workplace where everyone can thrive, where we lift each other up, not because we have to, but because it's the right thing to do." Applause broke out, long and loud, as Elizabeth stepped down, her heart full. She had not only transformed herself but had also played a part in transforming an entire company. As she passed Michael, he gave her a nod of acknowledgement, his eyes shining with respect. Elizabeth knew she had left a legacy of change, a true testament to the power of transformation and redemption. Months after her retirement, Elizabeth found herself restless. Retirement was meant to be a time of relaxation and enjoyment, but she felt a compelling urge to continue contributing. Inspired by her transformative experience at Millstone Corp., she decided to take her message of inclusion and personal growth to a broader audience. Elizabeth started a consultancy focusing on diversity and leadership training. She traveled to companies and schools, sharing her story and the lessons she learned about prejudice, redemption, and the importance of an inclusive workplace. One day, Elizabeth received a call from a struggling tech startup. They had heard of her work and wanted her to help address some deep-seated cultural issues that were affecting their business. Elizabeth saw this as a chance to test her resolve and truly make a difference. She dived into the challenge with the same vigor she had applied to her own transformation. Through workshops, one-on-one sessions, and open forums, she helped the company's staff confront and overcome their biases, just as she had once done. As the startup began to turn around, Elizabeth reflected on the impact of her efforts. It wasn't just about improving business metrics, it was about changing lives. She had seen employees grow from close-minded individuals to champions of diversity. Her success at the startup led to more companies seeking her expertise. Elizabeth's calendar was soon filled with speaking engagements and consultations. She had found a new purpose in fostering environments where everyone could thrive. Her work did not go unnoticed. A prestigious business magazine featured her story, highlighting her journey from a senior manager with prejudiced views to a celebrated diversity consultant. The article sparked interest in diversity initiatives across the business community, further spreading her influence. As Elizabeth sat in her home office, looking over the framed article on her wall next to her awards from Millstone Corp., she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She knew her work was far from done, but she had made a significant impact. The phone rang, breaking her reverie. It was Michael, who had moved on to an even bigger role in the global tech scene. He congratulated her on the article and her ongoing work. "Elizabeth, I always knew you had the potential to do great things," Michael said warmly. "You've taken your second chance and turned it into a beacon of hope for so many." Elizabeth smiled, her eyes moist with gratitude. "Thank you, Michael. You were the catalyst for all of this. Your willingness to forgive changed not just my career, but my entire life." The story of Elizabeth's redemption and her subsequent impact on the corporate world serves as a powerful testament to the capacity for personal growth and the ripple effect it can have on society. Her journey from a prejudiced manager to a beloved mentor and advocate for diversity underscores the transformative power of empathy and understanding. As she ended the call with Michael, Elizabeth looked out her window, her heart full of hope for the future. She knew that each day presented a new opportunity to teach, learn, and, most importantly, to change for the better. The story of her life was one of continual growth and new beginnings, a narrative she hoped would inspire others to embark on their own journeys of transformation. Years continued to roll by, and Elizabeth's influence in the world of corporate culture reform only grew stronger. Her consultancy firm evolved, employing a team of diverse trainers and speakers who carried the torch of her initial mission to companies around the globe. Elizabeth decided to expand her reach beyond corporate environments. She initiated a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating young adults and teenagers about diversity and inclusion. Her programs were integrated into school curriculums, focusing on early education to combat prejudice before it could take root. Her work caught the attention of national leaders. Elizabeth was invited to speak at a series of televised roundtables discussing national policies on workplace diversity and inclusion. Her insights from years in the field brought a practical, tested perspective that influenced policy decisions at the highest levels. One quiet evening, Elizabeth sat down to write her memoir. It was to be a collection of her experiences, the challenges she faced, and the countless individuals she'd met along the way. Her story was not just about the change in one woman, but about the potential for change in anyone. As she wrote, she realized how her own transformation had sparked a chain reaction. The narrative was bigger than her, Michael, or any one company. It was about societal evolution and the enduring power of humanity to overcome its darker impulses. During a visit to a university where she was a guest lecturer, Elizabeth met a group of students who had formed a club based on her teachings. They were actively promoting diversity and inclusion in their community and had plans to take their message nationwide. Seeing these young people take up the mantle filled Elizabeth with immense pride and hope. It was a clear sign that her legacy would live on, sustained by the new generation she had inspired. Elizabeth decided it was time for one last public lecture, which would be broadcasted live across various platforms. The lecture hall was packed, a testament to her impact. She spoke about the journey of a lifetime, emphasizing the importance of continuous personal growth and societal empathy. As she concluded, standing ovations resonated through the hall, and the applause was not just for her but for the idea that change is possible and necessary. It was a powerful moment, marking the end of an era and the beginning of another. In her home, surrounded by photographs of her travels, awards, and letters from people she'd helped, Elizabeth felt a profound peace. Her story had been one of redemption, transformation, and hope, a narrative that would continue to inspire. As night fell, she penned the last words of her memoir, a message to whoever would read it. Change starts with a moment of realization, a desire to do better, and the courage to act on it. Let my story be your starting point. With that, she closed her notebook, content in knowing that while her public speeches might have ended, her influence and legacy would resonate for generations to come. After her final public lecture, Elizabeth didn't slow down. Instead, she shifted her focus towards more intimate, impactful endeavors. She started small discussion groups that met regularly, diving deep into topics of bias, systemic change, and personal accountability. These gatherings grew in popularity, evolving into a community movement. Elizabeth's impact was no longer confined to her own country. Requests for her expertise and her consultancy's programs came from around the world. She facilitated virtual workshops and webinars, reaching audiences in distant continents, spreading her message of diversity and inclusion to global corporations and communities alike. Her continued advocacy work began influencing international policies. Elizabeth was asked to serve as a consultant for various international human rights organizations, helping draft guidelines that were adopted by numerous countries to ensure fairer, more inclusive workplace environments. Despite her global influence, Elizabeth found the most joy in the quieter moments, seeing a young workshop attendee light up with understanding or receiving emails from former skeptics who had changed their ways. These personal stories of transformation reminded her of why she started her journey. As time passed, Elizabeth knew it was important to ensure the sustainability of her work. She began mentoring a select group of individuals who shared her passion for diversity and inclusion. These protégés were trained to lead in her stead, equipped with the knowledge and ethos to carry on her legacy. Elizabeth spent a tranquil afternoon in her garden, now in her later years, reflecting on the winding path her life had taken. From a woman fraught with biases to a beacon of change, her story was one of profound transformation. She decided to compile these reflections into a series of essays, hoping to offer guidance and inspiration for future generations. To solidify her life's work, Elizabeth established a foundation in her name, dedicated to funding and supporting diversity initiatives worldwide. The foundation also sponsored scholarships for students from marginalized backgrounds, aiming to cultivate leaders who could advocate for change within their own communities. To celebrate her 80th birthday, a grand event was organized, attended by friends, family, colleagues, and many she had touched through her work. Speeches were made, not only celebrating her age but more so the vast impacts of her efforts, echoes of change that would ripple through time. In the quiet of her study, surrounded by the many accolades and tokens of appreciation she had received over the years, Elizabeth penned a final message in her last book, a compilation of all her teachings and memories. To all who walk the path of change, know that it is never linear nor easy. It demands courage, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to growth. I leave you with my story, not as a map, but as a compass. May it guide you as you forge your own paths. With that, she closed her notebook, her work complete, content in the knowledge that while her days of active engagement might be waning, the seeds she had planted would grow and flourish in the care of the next generation, continuing the fight for a more equitable world. As the evening light faded, casting long shadows across her cozy study, Elizabeth sat back in her chair, a sense of profound fulfillment washing over her. Her eyes swept over the room, lingering on each book, each photograph, and each memento that lined the shelves, each a chapter of her own story. Her journey had started with a stumble, a fall into the depths of her own biases and prejudices, yet it was from this fall that she rose, learning, growing, and eventually leading others to do the same. She had transformed her life from one of exclusion to one of inclusion, from ignorance to understanding. Elizabeth knew her physical presence at seminars and workshops would lessen, but her influence would not. Through her books, the foundation, and the leaders she had mentored, her insights and principles would persevere, encouraging new generations to challenge the status quo and push for a more inclusive society. As she closed her eyes, she could almost hear the voices of those she had touched, each one a ripple made by the stone she had cast into the vast ocean of social consciousness. These voices would continue to resonate, merge, and grow, each adding to the chorus of change. With a gentle smile, Elizabeth leaned back, her heart content and her mission fulfilled. The story of her life, her mistakes, her lessons, and her redemption was now out there, a beacon for those navigating the tumultuous waters of cultural transformation. She had done her part, and now it was time for others to take up the torch. Her last thought before drifting off was a simple hope, that her story would inspire at least one person to change, to learn, and to lead. If so, everything she had done would have been worth it. With that final thought, the room grew quiet, the only sound the soft ticking of the clock, marking the passage of time and the enduring impact of a life well lived. In the twilight of her years, Elizabeth's life story serves as a powerful testament to the possibility of personal redemption and the profound impact one individual can have on society. From a senior manager entrenched in her prejudiced views to a revered advocate for diversity and inclusion, Elizabeth's journey underscores the transformative power of empathy, understanding, and committed action. Her legacy, enshrined in her books, her foundation, and the lives she touched, continues to inspire and guide new generations towards fostering environments of inclusivity and respect. Through her story, we are reminded that change often begins with a difficult look within, and that the courage to confront and grow from one's mistakes can ripple outwards, influencing countless others. Elizabeth's narrative concludes not just as a personal victory over prejudice, but as an ongoing dialogue about the essential, continuous work of building a just and equitable world. Her life's work encourages us all to carry forward the torch of transformation, ensuring that her journey towards understanding and inclusion continues to enlighten paths long after her time. As we reflect on Elizabeth's story, we are called to action, motivated not only to challenge our own biases, but to enact and advocate for systemic change. In this way, Elizabeth's legacy is not confined to the past but lives on, a beacon that lights the way forward in the ever-evolving quest for social justice and equality. Thanks for watching. If you were inspired by this story and want to be part of the change, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our upcoming videos. Share this video with your friends to spread the message and join us in the conversation below by sharing your thoughts and experiences. Let's build a community dedicated to fostering inclusivity and understanding together.